I wanted to talk to you about some marriage advice from an 88-year-old, almost 88-year-old woman. She's my mother, and I'm privileged to actually have her in my home caring for her right now. And I said, hey, Mom, do you want to do a Facebook Live video with me? And she said no. But I said, I'm curious, what advice would you give to others about marriage? So whether it was something that you did really well that you think is important, or maybe something that you didn't do so well with, that you struggled with. And so I'm going to share that with you today, what my almost 88-year-old mother gave for marriage advice. And she said to be more patient in the relationship. And she went on to explain how my father wasn't real excited about going to church, okay? And to her it was very important, and he would support her in that, but he wouldn't go himself. And so she felt she was not patient because she would complain. She would say, why don't you go to church with me? It's really important. You need to be an example for your children, and whatever types of things she might say to him. And she felt like she just did it way too much, that she complained. And I said, oh, Mom, some people call that nagging. She said, yeah, that's the word. I was nagging about this situation because he wouldn't go and attend church with me. And, we may tend to complain or nag to our spouse about other things. Maybe it's not doing chores. Maybe it's doing chores not the right way. Maybe it's how they discipline their children. Maybe it's that they're late, or we have to wait for them all the time. For some reason, my husband's thinking that he waits a lot for me, and he tries to be patient about it, right? But whatever it is, we may tend to get caught up in the nagging, the complaining. And actually, there's 3 C's that I want you to think about as I share a little bit more of my mom's story and advice. And the 3 C's are the complaining, condemning, or criticizing. All right, so all 3 of those things can be really detrimental to our relationship. And if you think about it, it's a way that we are tearing people down instead of building them up, right? It's a very negative energy. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why. And I've got to remember to show you this picture that's on my lap, but I forgot. In fact, let me just show you right now. So here's a picture of my parents when they were younger. And yes, my mom would nag to my dad, you need to go to church more, right? And so we might say, well, why do we complain and condemn and criticize? There's always a reason behind it, right? And as an energy healing practitioner, I see this a lot of why we make bad choices and we do things or say things that injure our relationships, and it has to do with fear. And the one biggie is fear of the judgment from other people. All right, so if my mom is feeling like people are judging her because she comes to church week after week, dragging her kids, me and my brother or whatever, and her husband's not there, she maybe feared the judgment of others. In fact, she said one thing that she was afraid of is feeling like people would think that her husband wasn't a good man. And in all reality, her husband, my father, was an amazing man. He was probably better than some of the people that went to church as far as being a true Christian, being honest, treating people with kindness and respect. And he was a very patient man. I tell you, he raised me. And he was really, really patient with me and all the troubles that I could have given to my parents, right? And so she had this fear that other people would think that he wasn't a good man. And it might be with our children. We may have these fears that when our kids are making bad choices, not doing the things that we think are good and right, that other people are judging them, judging us. We maybe feel like a failure as a parent, right? And as a spouse, maybe similar thing. When we feel like our spouse is not meeting our expectations or doing the things the way we want them to do, then we may fear judgment from others. The other thing that we may fear, and I see this, not all of us, but some people fear the judgment of God, right? So if you imagine like this situation, a spouse not going to church, or a child not going to church, or getting in trouble with the law or whatever, some of that fear of God comes in, that somehow we won't all make it to heaven together, right? And so that can cause us to complain and condemn and to criticize because we are afraid of not being with our loved ones, not being, on the clouds with the angels playing our harps, right, after this life. And so fear is really, really huge. Fear of judgment from others, fear of judgment from God. When we have these fears, it can actually make the situation worse. So you've probably heard of this term, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So the idea that if we think or we believe something about ourselves, that we're going to do or we're going to say or we're going to act in ways that cause this self-fulfilling prophecy to come true. Why it's so important to pay attention to our thoughts and where they're coming from. And if they're not making us feel good and happy and confident and hopeful, we might want to reconsider what thoughts we're letting play over and over in our head. So this self-fulfilling prophecy can be pushed on other people. Believe it or not, what we think and believe can affect other people's choices. Now, we all have choice. We all have a freedom to choose. And we can't play the blame game and say that, well, it's your fault because you said this and you did this, so I went off and did this stupid thing. So that's your fault, right? No, we can't play that kind of a blame game. But it is true that what we think and feel and believe about others can affect the actions of others. So back to the story of my mother complaining and nagging to my father about not going to church, is how did that make him feel? Week after week, month after month, maybe year after year, right? How did he feel? Because she's like, well, you really should be going to church with us. You're not really setting a very good example. And whatever things were said, and then even more so, the deeper thoughts that we don't say out loud, guys. Those things that we would be really embarrassed to say because they're kind of evil. I have those thoughts too. The 3 C's: condemn, criticize, complain. There's an antidote, okay? What might the antidote be to the 3 terrible C's? Well, I'm just going to put some words out there for you. Hope. We need to have hope. We need to have faith. We need to have patience. Okay, that's the one thing my mother said. I wasn't very patient, right? Because we want things now. We want things perfect right now. And it's so hard to be patient. And we need to believe in change. If we can't believe that other people can change, we can't believe that ourselves can change. And both of those things are super, super important. So hope, faith, patience. Believe that they can change and treat them in a kind, respectful manner and stop the complaining, condemning, and criticizing, right? So I'm going to end with a funny story. And it's my mom that told me this story. So the situation, I'm going to show you this picture again, this beautiful picture of my parents when they were young. Actually, there's probably no pictures of them at their own wedding and reception. This was like from a different one. And then my daughter photoshopped this beautiful temple building behind there. So anyway, the funny story to end with. My mother would go to church and my father would take her every week because we lived quite a few miles from the church. And so he supported her, even though he didn't go himself. And she would go, and there was a man at church that would say, "So nice to see you, Iris. Why did you not bring Irv? Why is your husband not here with you?" And she would have to hear that week after week and month after month. And that kind of felt like this person was condemning or criticizing, right? Finally, one day, my mother said to this man who said, "Why is your husband not at church with you? Why do you not bring him?" And she said, "Well, because she's probably the same place that your wife is." Now, this man, his wife rarely came to church. And so my mother was pointing out, where's your wife, right? We all have our stuff. We all have our weaknesses and our sins and our things to overcome. Let's just learn to love and have faith and hope and belief. And please ponder in your own life, if the 3 C's are showing up, are you complaining, nagging? Are you condemning, or are you criticizing? And I promise you, if you'll ponder that, journal it, think about it the next few weeks, things will show up and you'll see ways to improve and to love and to support and believe in other people. So thanks for joining me today, guys. I would love to hear, comment below your ideas of how you support your spouse, your children, your family in positive ways, and how maybe you've been able to overcome the tendency to want to complain, condemn, or criticize. So have a fantastic day. Catch y'all later. Bye.